In Chicago today, President Biden manifested Dark Brandon as he gave a speech about Bidenomics, the term used by the press to describe his economic agenda and accomplishments. And he also took shots at disgraced conservative economists, arrogant billionaire bankers, and Donald Trump. Intrigued? Then click that like and subscribe, and enjoy the video. Today's videos have had a consistent theme of President Biden, so I figured that's how we'll end the day, because he gave a great speech in Chicago about Bidenomics, the term that had been very often disparagingly used by like the Wall Street Journal and other conservative publications like Fox News to describe President Biden's economic agenda and accomplishments. Well, now it seems that Biden is embracing the term, and I'm glad he's doing it, and he's turning on the dark Brandon energy, which the Democratic Party and the left constantly need, and it was a great speech. And we discussed it very briefly in one of the previous videos, but now that the speech is concluded, there's a lot to unpack. And I want to play several clips from President Biden's speech, and we'll unpack it all together, starting with a reference point. So Bidenomics is a reference to what we called Reaganomics, which is, of course, a reference to President Ronald Reagan of the Republican Party back in the 80s. And President Reagan was a proponent of what we call trickle-down economics or supply-side economics, which is essentially the idea that if you cut taxes for the rich and you deregulate, and you just let businesses and the rich, acquire great wealth and make it easy for them to acquire great wealth, well, then the economic rewards will trickle down to the lower and middle classes, right? Basically, out of generosity and just economic trajectory, the uber rich at the top will pay more to the laborers at the bottom. And we'll just play the clip by President Biden, and then we'll unpack it together.
Vision is a fundamental break from the economic theory that has failed America's middle class for decades now. It's called trickle-down economics, fundamental economics, trickle down. The idea it's belief that we should cut taxes for the wealthy and big corporations. And I know something about big corporations. There's more corporations in Delaware incorporated than every other state in the union combined. I want them to do well, but I'm tired of waiting for the trickle down. It doesn't come very quickly. Not much trickle down at my dad's kitchen table growing up.
So to be very clear, trickle-down economics and supply-side economics, what again politically we referred to as Reagan economics, have been widely debunked. The economic consensus from most economists all over the world is that supply-side economics, trickle-down economics are ridiculous. That if you cut taxes and you deregulate, you may make it easier for the rich to get richer, but that has absolutely no bearing on the economic prosperity of middle and lower classes. It is a thoroughly debunked economic theory which solely benefits the rich. And by the way, as simple like national fiscal policy, the tax cuts during the Reagan years and the Bush years and the Trump years, there are no credible studies which indicate that it stimulated growth or benefited the economy in any meaningful way, again, other than to make the rich richer. So, another clip by President Biden I want to play, and again, we'll continue to unpack.
I knew we couldn't go back to the same failed policies when I ran. So I came into office determined to change the economic direction of this country, to move from trickle-down economics what everyone on Wall Street Journal and Financial Times began to call Bidenomics. I didn't come up with the name. I really didn't. I now claim it, but they're the ones that used it first. I got asked by a press person this morning, getting on a helicopter in Washington, why, when I asked you about Bidenomics a long time ago, you said you didn't know what it was. I said, I didn't name it Bidenomics. I didn't realize the economists in the Wall Street Journal did. But I think it's a plan that I'm happy to call Bidenomics. And guess what? Bidenomics is working. When I took office, the pandemic was raging and our economy was reeling. Supply chains are broken, millions of people unemployed, hundreds of thousands of small businesses on the verge of closing after so many had already closed. Literally hundreds of thousands on the verge of closing. Today, the U.S. has the highest economic growth rate leading the world economies since the pandemic, the highest in the world. As Dick said, with his help, we created 13.4 million new jobs. More jobs in 2 years than any president has ever made in 4 and 2. And folks, it's no accident. That's Bidenomics in action. Bidenomics is about building an economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not the top down.
So again, that's great branding on Biden's part. Whoever advised him to basically claim, like, you know, that the Bidenomics phrase had been used to describe him disparagingly for the past 2 years. So just weaponize it, seize it for yourself, claim it, and weaponize it, and tether it to all the economic accomplishments under your agenda. And he mentioned them, you know, in that clip. 13 million jobs created, as we've discussed. More jobs are created by far when a Democrat is in the White House than a Republican. It's simply not a matter of opinion. It's a simple fact. The small business growth is extraordinary under President Biden relative to Republicans as well. Unemployment rate is under 4%, and it's been consistently under 4% for the longest duration in the past like 50 or 60 years. So just one accomplishment after another, and he's right to brag about it. Now, as I mentioned in the intro to this video, President Biden is also, as Dark Brandon, taking shots at some other people. You saw him take shots at the Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times, and conservative economists and, you know, political conservatives who believed in the trickle-down economics. But he also takes a shot directly at some billionaires, and I'll play the clip and we'll go from there.
Or the one that bothers me the most is overdraft fees for banks. The banks made $7.7 billion a year on overdraft fees. You overdraft a check, you get a penalty. It's one of the leading bank presidents, God love him, he's passed away, but he had a yacht. The name of the yacht was Overdraft. Swear to God. Well, guess what? There are going to be no more overdraft fees. Folks.
And what he's talking about is thanks to the Biden administration, many banking and lending institutions have agreed to get rid of junk fees as well, thanks to overt pressure from the president and the Democratic Party. That's going to mean quite a bit to the average person in the United States, since overdrafting is a common occurrence in everyday banking for everyday Americans. And the fact that these banks will no longer, you know, charge fees to their clients will make a meaningful difference. Now, President Biden also took pot shots at former President Donald Trump over his lack of accomplishments. And again, I love this energy. I love when Biden sticks it to Trump because, number one, Trump deserves it. Number two, the Republicans need to hear it, even if, and perhaps especially if it hurts their feelings. And there's plenty to mock Trump about, but Biden takes two opportunities here. And we're going to play the first clip and unpack it, and then play the second clip as well.
That builds on my decision to rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement on the first day I came to office. The first day. And by the way, my predecessor talked a lot about increasing manufacturing. Remember Infrastructure Week? Infrastructure Week became Infrastructure Week and week and week and week and week. It never happened. We got Infrastructure Decade done right off the bat. But in reality, construction of manufacturing facilities here on U.S. soil grew only 2% on my predecessor's watch. In 4 years, 2%. On my watch, it's grown nearly 100% in 2 years. 100%.
So again, that's a great point by President Biden, and just goes to show the incompetence of Donald Trump, even when he had a trifecta. There was a time at the beginning of Trump's administration when he had the White House, the Supreme Court, and both chambers of Congress, and this man failed to get anything meaningful done because he and his leadership are so incredibly stupid when it comes to actually governing. They're great at culture war stuff, but in terms of wielding levers of power to rule, to administer, to govern, they suck at it, and Democrats are infinitely better. So Donald Trump swore that he would, like when he promised he would repeal and replace Obamacare and failed to do that. He also promised that he would revitalize the nation's infrastructure, and he failed to do it in 4 years. President Biden got it done bipartisanly in his first year in office, thus demonstrating the vast cognitive, legislative, administrative, and governmental superiority of Joe Biden over Donald Trump. It's not a matter of opinion. It's simply a fact. And then he takes another pot shot here at the very end. This one's kind of cheap, but I love it, in reference to Donald Trump's propensity to keep things that don't belong to him. So let's hear it from President Biden.
Time, more than 68 hours. By the way, I turned in all my notes. But It's the God's truth. He asked me, we're in a Tibetan plateau, and he asked me, he said, can you define America for me? I said, yes, in one word, and I meant it. Possibilities. 68 time, more than 68 hours. By the way, I turned in all my notes.
So he's making a reference to Xi Jinping, the leader of China, and he said that during his meetings with Xi as vice president, he turned in all his notes, unlike Donald Trump. And he's also referencing the fact that he considers America defined by opportunity, which is also Campbell's Soup slogan. The last thing we'll play here is the latest Bidenomics campaign ad that President Biden released after his Chicago speech. It's about a minute long. We will play this and end it here.
Bidenomics. 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 Bidenomics.
We're talking about Bidenomics. Invest in America. Educate Americans. Grow the workforce. Build the economy from the bottom up and the middle out, not from the top down. Made in America is no longer just a slogan. It's happening. We're finally getting this done. So my message to the American people is this: America's moving again.
So again, that was a great speech from President Biden. That was a great campaign ad. Democrats need to get much more outspoken, much more consistently, and much more aggressively about the economic successes of not just President Biden and the Biden administration, but just the Democratic Party, period. Facts don't speak for themselves, and we need your help to do it. Everybody needs to be rubbing it in the face of Republicans and conservatives. That way we can take back the perception that the Republican Party is any good on economic or fiscal issues, when the fact of the matter is they suck at it. And if you really want economic prosperity, even as a conservative voter in a red state, you need to vote Democrat.